Hi everyone, I hope this finds you doing well. I wanted to show a demo of a new static code analyzer that I've integrated into Illuminated Cloud, in particular the SLDS Validator from Salesforce. Now, if you're not familiar with that, it is effectively a static code analyzer for CSS files, markup files, so Aura and Lightning Web Components markup files, and JavaScript, anywhere you have references to SLDS styles, and potentially could improve those, move off of deprecated ones, use design tokens when they're available, things like that. It reports those with quick fixes potentially, and so I've integrated that into Illuminated Cloud. It's actually, in addition to being delivered as an extension for VS Code, the core of it, the actual logic of it, is delivered as a language server, so LSP, and that's actually how we're going to integrate it into Illuminated Cloud. So let's take a look. Now, I'm going to be doing this demo in WebStorm, but this particular capability is going to work in any of the JetBrains IDEs that are supported by Illuminated Cloud, whether they're commercial edition IDEs or community edition IDEs, and we're going to actually integrate that using LSP for IJ. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go in here to the editor settings, and we're going to go to inspections and go to the Salesforce specific inspections, and we'll see that there's a new inspection called SLDS Validator. This is how it's going to look when you first encounter it. So it's going to be enabled, but it's not going to have the prereqs that it needs. So it's going to need the LSP for IJ plugin, and it's going to actually need that language server jar, the SLDS Validator language server jar. So let's just walk through how to get those. Now again, if you're not familiar with LSP for IJ, I actually used this over the last couple of months to really improve the editor experience for the free JetBrains Community Edition IDE users for JavaScript, TypeScript, and CSS. And so it basically is a free open source plugin from Red Hat. It is something that I'm actually contributing quite heavily to right now in order to improve the editor experience. Basically, where I'm seeing shortcomings, omissions, things like that. I've been doing a lot of work on it over the last, I'd say, 3 months or so, and have really enjoyed working on that and working with that team. So if you're not comfortable installing this, I apologize. This is the way that I'm integrating the SLDS Validator. Hopefully, you'll be fine with that. And like I said, this isn't just for Community Edition users. This is also for commercial edition IDE users. So let's go ahead and say that we want to install that. Say yes. It's going to show us the plugin installer here. So I'm going to say install LSP for IJ, and we're going to go ahead and allow the IDE to restart. And then once it restarts, we're going to need to go ahead and get that language server installed. So we can see down here that this is now a language server. We can see that this is the language server's LSP for IJ console. There's an SLDS Validator language server there, but it's not actually doing anything yet because it doesn't actually have the language server jar. Now, to download it, you can go ahead and click this link, and it will go ahead and download it for you. Now, note that it is a hard-coded path right now because it is downloading right here from Salesforce's own GitHub repo. Now, this is 2.0.12. You can easily imagine that that's going to move to 2.0.13, 2.0.14. I will be tracking that. I may even see if I can convince them to go ahead and have another version of it beside it, like LSP latest executable.jar, so that you can have static links to it that are durable. But if for whatever reason when you go to download it, it's a broken link, you can obviously go into this GitHub repo and just say you want to download the actual raw file. I'm not distributing it with Illuminated Cloud because it's a pretty big jar, and right now I'm not downloading it for you, again, because it's going to be a variable URL anyway. So we've downloaded it. Let's go ahead and tell Illuminated Cloud where it is. This means it's in my downloads directory. And so let's go ahead and say OK. And if we go back over here, we can see that this language server has now started. Now, before we look at what it's doing, let's look at the language server itself. So right now, there's nothing you can do to configure it, but at least we can look at what it says that it does. So of course, it integrates this static code analyzer, the SLDS Validator, into Illuminated Cloud. And we can see that it is not just enabled for CSS files, but as I said earlier, for markup files and logic files in Aura and Lightning Web Components as well. So Aura apps and components, of course CSS, LWC template HTML files, and then JavaScript and TypeScript for both of those. Okay, and if you wanted for whatever reason to turn on debug logging or something for the language server, that's a feature of LSP for IJ, but let's just kind of look at what we have here. So we'll start with an LWC CSS file, and we can see that we have some squigglies now. So let's go ahead and move over here, and we can see also up here that we've gone to kind of a yellow state in terms of our file analysis. And so I'm using F2 and Shift F2 to move back and forth. And so this is saying that we should consider replacing this with an updated design token. Now, sometimes it will, as we'll see in just a moment, it will go ahead and give a quick fix to replace with that design token. Sometimes it will not. Let's say in this case, we're very happy with the color we specified there. So we do want to kind of make this so it doesn't constantly get reported and we're not sure if we have problems. So we're going to go ahead and use the suppression capabilities. And it's going to add a comment above this saying suppress the next line. So we'll move to the next one. And this one's saying that we can use an updated design token. It gives a very specific one, and it gives a quick fix to do that. So we'll go ahead and update to that, and you can see that that problem's now gone. So moving on to the next one. Again, this gives a quick fix to update this to a token for color gray, and we do that. But it's still showing as having an issue. In fact, the exact same issue. This seems to be a bug in the SLDS Validator. I need to report that to him. I've reported another bug we'll talk about in a moment. But you can see that if I continue to accept the fix, it just keeps effectively applying the exact same change, but nesting further. So now that we have this the way that we want, we'll go ahead and say ignore, because right now the validator is going to keep reporting that. And then we'll go to the next one. It's saying that we need to change this to facing none. It recommends that we do. So we'll go ahead and change that. And that one actually does go ahead and go away. And you can see up here that it's showing that there are no problems. So this LWC CSS file, we've now actually incorporated all of the feedback that it has provided, the SLDS validator, right here in the IDE. So let's go to an ARA CSS file. So several things being reported here. We can see that there's something being reported, I think, at a more severe level than the others we've seen that are just kind of the squiggly underline, light gray underline. This one's actually highlighted a little more prominently, and it's effectively saying, hey, you are completely overriding a core SLDS style. Not recommended. It's recommended that you create a custom style and then obviously refer to that in your markup. But in this case, let's say this is exactly what we want to do. So we'll go ahead and just suppress this. That goes away. And again, we're just going to kind of work through this. Now, some of these are going to require us to fix and then suppress because of that same bug. So suppress, we'll just keep working through these. Suppress, I think we're going to fix and we're going to suppress. We get the bonus plan there. And I think this one actually we can fix and it just goes away. And we can see that we've moved on to green here. And just to show an example that this is not just CSS, here is here's an HTML, an LWC HTML template file, and it's saying, hey, if this particular component is going to be shown in a mobile context, you need to add a label. Let's say that we don't actually support mobile, so we'll go ahead and just suppress that so we don't have to deal with it. So we've actually managed to make all these things go there green. Okay, so that kind of shows you the mechanisms by which this works. So effectively, it's going to report things, and you're either going to accept their fixes, or you're going to suppress it because it's the way you want it to be, or in the case of that bug, you're going to accept the fix, and then you're going to have to suppress it until they no longer report it, even though you fixed it. Giving obviously kind of a false positive there. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that we've talked about what's there. Let's talk about some of the things that are not there or are kind of problematic. So I did show, and let's go over here and we can show an example of this. I did show that we can suppress this by doing next line, but there's another way to suppress issues in SLDS, and I'm going to actually do a surround with ignore, and we can surround this with comments that say SLDS validator ignore. And that tells it from there down, no lexical scope or anything like that. Like as it's processing the file, from there down, don't report any issues until or unless it finds another comment with SLDS validator allowed. That's the concept. So we've surrounded it with this, and we can see it did. It suppressed that. The problem is if we go down here and get rid of this one, notice that it's not being reported now. So there seems to be a bug right now with the SLDS validator in the way that it, as far as I can tell, specifically processes or doesn't process SLDS validator allow. And going back down here, I've actually reported that in a pretty significant amount of detail on how to reproduce it in their GitHub repo, in their public issue tracker. So hopefully they'll fix that. But right now, just be aware that this particular mechanism doesn't really work. It doesn't seem to be respecting SLDS validator allow comments. So right now, the next line that we had previously, that seems to be the best way to do it. And I'm actually applying that suppression in Illuminated Cloud by looking at the next lexical line and suppressing anything that comes in explicitly for that line. I don't know, because I'm not a VS Code user. I don't know if the VS Code extensions are doing the same type of, in the extension rather than in the language server, the same type of suppression processing. It's possible they are. But if you happen to work on a team that is hybrid, that some are using Illuminated Cloud, some are using VS Code, you may see mixed results here just because the language server doesn't seem to be processing these consistently. Or if you happen to be a user that goes back and forth between the two tools and kind of uses different aspects of the two tools to work on the same files. But right now, Illuminated Cloud is applying this particular suppression mechanism according to the documentation. So I recommend that that's the one that you use when you're going through and making your pass on fixing and or suppressing. Okay, and then the next thing is you may have noticed that there are no other configuration options for the inspection than just specifying where the jar is, the SLDS language server jar. I have not found any documentation on how to configure the SLDS validator. Similar to the way that you can supply in PMD a rule set file. I have to assume something like that exists. I can't seem to find it. If you're more knowledgeable about this, and that wouldn't be very hard, by the way, if you're more knowledgeable about this and you know how you can configure the SLDS validator, please let me know. I'm really considering this integration to be a 1.0, it will evolve from there. And then, of course, hopefully, Salesforce will also be fixing some of the bugs that I've kind of commented on here. And as those get shored up, and as I integrate other capabilities, like assuming that it's available, more discrete configuration of which rules should be active and how should they be reported. This will evolve to be more in line with how something like the PMD integration works. But right now, what I'm showing you is you get all the information from the SLDS validator in the editor in real time in the appropriate files, and you can apply the quick fixes when they're available, and you can suppress things when you have things the way that you want. So it's certainly a nice 1.0 integration, but I certainly see opportunities for improvement based on other capabilities. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just stop there. That's really what I wanted to show. Like I said, if you have any feedback on this, if you see bugs, if you have thoughts on how to improve it, if you have insights into capabilities of this particular tool, the SLDS validator, that I may not be aware of, let me know, and I'll go ahead and get them integrated as long as they're under my control. If it's something that needs to be reported in the SLDS validator public issue tracker, we can work together on making sure it gets reported there and gets fixed in the right place there. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and take care.